welcome back to another review. Today I'm taking a look at the Oppo R9s smartphone. Costing just under $600 here in Australia, how well does it perform? Let's find out. Be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing if you enjoy this video. Released in early February of 2017, this phone is the successor to the original Oppo R9, which was generally well received, and praised for its excellent build quality and price leading up to the release of the R9s. JB Hi-Fi are now selling the original R9 for $479, but now that the R9s is here for $598, is it worth the extra money? In my unboxing video, which is linked in the description, I said it looks very familiar to the iPhone 6s. The Oppo, however, does have a headphone jack, expandable storage, and slots for 2 SIM cards. One feature it is missing, however, is NFC, so say goodbye to Android Pay. The downward-facing mono speaker isn't spectacular, very little bass, so nothing to write home about. The bezels around the screen are also quite small, which decreases the overall footprint of the phone, making it feel a lot smaller in hand when compared to other phones with 5.5-inch displays. The smooth metal finish is somewhat slippery in hand, however the included soft clear plastic case makes up for that slipperiness. The fingerprint reader is also super fast, like the fastest I've ever used. It seems as soon as you place your finger on the capacitive button, it's already unlocked. The refined antenna bands are also a welcome improvement over the original R9. I'll have to see how durable this phone is after a few months of use. I never usually use screen protectors, but thankfully it came with one already on it, which might save it from a shattered screen down the line. The 5.5-inch AMOLED display has great viewing angles and color. On top of that display is Corning Gorilla Glass 5, which should help it against scratching and maybe even save it from a fall or two. The white balance on my unit is a bit too cool, leaning to colors looking cooler than they really are and whites having a weird blue tinge to them. There doesn't appear to be a way to change the color calibration or color profile in the settings. Comparing side by side with the iPhone 6s Plus, there isn't much of a noticeable difference in maximum brightness. In direct sunlight, the Oppo R9s is definitely not that easy to see. Overall, I really like the display, I just wish there are options for color calibration and maybe more brightness. Under the hood is a Snapdragon 625 octa-core CPU clocked at 2 GHz with an Adreno 506 GPU. This definitely puts it in mid-range phone territory. And the 4GB of RAM is more than enough to keep the R9s running smoothly in most circumstances. The RAM management is thankfully handled mostly by the OS, and it does that in the background seamlessly. You can also kill all the apps at once if you wanted. I wasn't completely impressed with its gaming capability. In the apps I've tested, I did notice stuttering and occasional frame drops, which really surprised me as the iPhone 6s Plus, an older phone, which on paper has vastly inferior specs, a dual-core 1.84 GHz processor with 2 GB of RAM, kicked the Oppo R9s's arse. The difference in graphical performance is night and day, which definitely implies that the software on the R9s is nowhere near as optimized as the iPhone's. In the benchmarking app Antutu, I tested the iPhone 6s Plus against the original R9 as well as the R9s. The differences in graphical performance are quite astonishing really. The iPhone flies through the simulations and produces a constant frame rate. The final scores are quite different, with the iPhone reaching a score of 139,080, the R9 scoring 52,120, and the R9s reaching 66,290. The R9s is rocking Android 6.0 with ColorOS 3.0, Oppo's heavily modified Android experience. Upon its release, it's already a generation behind, with Android 7.0 Nougat out there on other devices. Oppo doesn't have the greatest history when it comes to software updates, so don't get your hopes up for whatever new features the latest version of Android has to offer. If you've ever used iOS, you'll feel right as home, as aesthetically it looks very similar. At first glance, I wouldn't be surprised if someone thinks you're actually using an iPhone. There are some areas that don't feel as polished, mainly the on-screen keyboard and music playing experience that iOS and iTunes deliver very well. With a faster f1.7 aperture, the main camera produces sharp images with a shallow depth of field. I've been pretty happy with the results. The focusing speed is also pretty good. The R9s has dual phase detection autofocus, making for fast and accurate focus in most lighting conditions. The addition of an expert mode allows you to get more control over the images you capture. Manual focus, shutter speed, ISO, white balance, and exposure compensation all come together to make taking photos a delight with this phone. You can even activate the shutter by saying cheese, which some people might find useful. Other features such as double exposure and the ability to make GIFs within the camera app are great. The front-facing camera has a nice wide field of view, making it easy to fit people into selfies. Oppo is really pushing the beautifying software enhancements, which are really popular in Asian markets. There is, however, some noticeable shutter lag, as in a significant delay between you clicking the shutter button and the phone actually taking the photo. This is more noticeable in low light conditions. Oppo's HDR photo processing is pretty subtle, making for mostly natural HDR images. However, I have noticed you have to be pretty still, otherwise there may be some weird ghosting, as it will cause the multiple exposures not to line up properly. Panorama mode stitches together the images really well, and I'm happy with the results. Using this camera in low light was quite impressive. Even in dark areas, the photos turned out pretty good. I must say that there were a few instances where the focusing was a bit hit or miss though. The camera really seems to favour low shutter speeds in low light conditions. Unlike the original R9, the R9S can shoot 4K video, which is a welcome improvement. There are no slow motion options whatsoever though. With a bitrate hanging around 50 megabits a second, the footage has a lot of detail. Image stabilization on the other hand is rather lacking, making any handheld video somewhat jittery no matter how stable your hands may be. The change in auto exposure is also quite noticeable when going from dark to light subjects. To summarise, this camera has a lot of potential and it can get some excellent shots for a smartphone. I'm hoping the gripes with stabilization, auto exposure and shutter lag are fixed with future software updates. When it comes to battery life, I found myself struggling to get through a full day of use. The 3010 mAh non-removable battery isn't massive, but I guess the silver lining is how fast it charges. I have never had a phone charge this fast in my life. In just under 30 minutes it went from 22 all the way up to 88% charge. The included power brick is rated at 4 amps and uses Oppo's VOOC flash charging technology. I really want to see more phone manufacturers adopt fast charging like this. In an age where cheap phones are getting better and good phones are getting cheaper, the Oppo R9S really rides the line between budget and premium with a price tag just below $600 in Australia. With competitive offerings like the OnePlus 3 at the same price point, it is pretty hard to recommend the R9S. Don't get me wrong, it's a solid offering, but the higher price point makes it hard to recommend over the original R9, which is selling for nearly $150 less than the R9S. With only negligible differences between the two, most people will go for the original R9 as it looks and acts like an iPhone without the $1,000+ price tag of a current gen iPhone. These days you can get a second-hand or even a refurbished iPhone 6s Plus for a similar amount, which in my opinion will give you a greater all-round smartphone experience. I'm really torn in my conclusion. It looks and feels great, but that mid-range hardware is somewhat of a letdown. The camera and fast charge are great, but the average battery life and poor image stabilization makes shooting video pretty poor in my opinion. If you're wanting to make a move from iOS to Android or want a more Apple Android experience, there really aren't many other options out there. The R9S is a good device. Let's see whether Oppo can make it a great device, with software updates in the near future. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a like if you've enjoyed. To see more videos and coverage of the R9S and many other devices, feel free to subscribe to my channel. On screen now are some recent videos you might be interested in. I'll see you next time.